Wow, I happen to time that perfectly. It's completely accidental.
Glorious.
Hey, we're all old enough to remember when you might have multiple devices and they would have slightly different times on them. Whereas now, I bet in your life, other than maybe your stove and your microwave and an old-fashioned clock, there's nothing in your home or your life that isn't atomically precise, right, for time. I don't ever have to think about the fact that what it says on my watch and what it says on your phone are, off by even, more than a thousandth of a second. It's pretty great.
Atomically precise, like my nuclear reactor.
We're living in the future. All right, let me see if I can kick this sucker, and then you can tell me if it's, because I won't be able to see it, if it's displaying properly, right?
Yeah.
See,
Okay,
Looks
so
good.
not next week, but the week after, we are doing the positioning workshop, which is typically a one-to-one session that takes like 75 minutes or more. And what it does is it's a variation of a workshop and writing process that I did literally hundreds of times last year for paying customers, for where I would walk people through. For the LinkedIn one, this was to write the about section of their LinkedIn page, just the about section of their LinkedIn page. It would take about an hour. And what would happen is they'd show up on a Zoom call and we would walk through a smaller version of the positioning workshop,
Mhm.
just around a message, sort of a positioning message to put on their LinkedIn page. And that would normally take around 35, 40 minutes. And then for the remainder of the hour, I would, while they watched me, because we'd share a Google document, while they watched me, I would from scratch write their new about section. And then that was it. Like they copy pasted into LinkedIn and it was finished.
Mhm.
And over time, it's expanded out to help entrepreneurs and people sort of wanting to reposition in their career and small businesses how to do their market positioning, which is just a larger version that you can use in a more omni-channel way. Like you'd use it in the intro for an elevator pitch. You'd use it for a 3330 package. In case you've never heard of a 3330 package, it's a 30-second statement, a 3-minute introduction, and the 30-second used to be called an elevator pitch. Terrible name, but
Terrible name.
3-minute introduction of what you and your company do, and a 30-minute presentation.
my TED Talk.
So it's for social media, it's for your own website, it's for your video content, right? It informs everything. It's the core building block of all the stuff that I do. For instance, the wider packages I do for businesses and for fractional CMOs, which is their sort of their one sheet, their website, their bio, their LinkedIn about section, all, and like many others. It's the cornerstone of all of them, because once you nail this, all of your messaging becomes way simpler. So since we're going to do that in a couple of weeks, I decided we might skip, because we have in the past talked about the LinkedIn one and sort of the core questions in that. So I thought we might show some of the questions and talk about them and sort of skip around, because there's 21 questions in that positioning webinar, positioning workshop. And so I thought we would skip around and show a handful of them and explain what we're aiming at and why.
Sounds good.
I like the preview of coming attractions.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, and this is why I put it in parentheses here, there is a different kind of positioning, self-branding kind of exercise that you will see around. And that's sort of getting at how to figure out what your why is. Like, why are you actually in this business? Why are you a coach? Why are you a fractional CMO? Why are you, an accountant, whatever, right? And a lot of times you'll see around that, or templates. People like to write just templates to get their brand statement. I am a blah because I'm passionate about blah, 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 right? And there's nothing wrong with any of those. Like we say before, right? Formulas are great. Formulaic is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I literally, one of the first things I used to tell people before people just stopped asking for it is in the LinkedIn sessions, in those workshops, is like, under no circumstances are we going to talk about your passions or your superpowers. Like, that is so self-centric. That's you trying to tell the world something that they're not yet interested in.
So do you think of their passions and superpowers and everything else as their kryptonite in terms of promotion?
It is the fastest way to turn off a stranger who you have not yet proven that you're worth the time investment or emotional investment to get to know.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with it, and you certainly kind of should know why you're doing something or why you're in this career or what your overall why is for serving this community that you serve. But it's just using passions or my why is or superpowers, variations of this we've seen before in like when we do marketing websites. We talk about the manifesto ones, right? Like we
Right.
believe that because of X we do Y, right? And it's the very first thing they say, right? That's no different than a personal version of my passion is or I'm passionate about or whatever. Like
Needle
nobody
point.
goes there to, this is so weird. And it's also why the LinkedIn about section can be so hard for people to write well, and why so many people don't write anything, don't even have an about section of it, is that you're writing to a stranger about the stranger. You're trying to tell them their story with you in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to get out of your own head, though, and that's not just for the people who've like paid me to do this. I mean, it's true for me. It's true for literally everyone in the world. It is very hard to get outside your own head and look at yourself or your business objectively the way a stranger will. Right? You almost always need someone else to help you do that. But anyway, there are workshops around that and exercises around that and finding out your why and discovering your superpowers, whatever, and by all means, go for it. But that is not what we're going to be building here. We're going to be learning how to tell a prospect, a hiring manager, some CEO of a company you'd like to work with. We're going to figure out how to tell them their story with you in it. Now, of course, we don't know everybody's story in which we would insert ourselves. And that's not what we're going to try to do. That's impossible. There are an infinite number of stories. But all of everyone's personal or corporate stories have approximately 21 elements. And they're not all equally important. They don't all deserve the same amount of time. You don't need to address all of them. But based on why you're doing what you do and what you do, you will find the elements that make sense for you, for your story, to tell them their story with you in it. And so this will become clearer as we go forward. Okay.
So with 21, is it like positioning blackjack?
Yeah, basically you double down the whole works.
Okay,
Right?
cool.
Okay. Now, this is the easiest and hardest one. There are three that are super hard. I think this is the only one of the three we're actually going to get covered today. But it is very, very, very hard to get people to narrow down to just one type of person in an audience.
It is.
And not just because everyone, well, there are a few reasons for this. Everyone is afraid that if they don't throw all the spaghetti on the wall, nothing will stick.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so they figure I will just fire hose people with all this like options. And I do this, but I also do that. And I do this. And, I collect stray dogs, but I also, fix fireplaces. And it's like, what are you talking about? I can't even put you in a category in my head.
Yeah,
Now, it's hard to get people to narrow down because they're afraid they're going to miss opportunities. We've got a whole other section. We talked about this before about not having a niche, having a niche, and having a halo niche and all of that kind of stuff. We're not going to go into that. But the other reason is, and this is actually my challenge, is that as you work with different clients and kinds of clients and, clients come into your life, you will start pivoting and organically changing your business and your offering, which means you need to redo your story when that happens. And so I hear music from something.
Hopefully not a copyright infringement.
Yeah, hopefully not. Actually, hopefully not. But on the
It's
other
short
hand,
enough.
it's
It was
not
short.
a bad idea for all of my points to be punctuated with like
Yeah.
music. I could walk around all day and have someone with like a boombox like just following me.
I've always wanted my life to have this entire
soundtrack.
musical background. Yeah.
Okay, so number one reason people don't like narrowing it down, you have to narrow it down. Number one reason is they're afraid if they don't say everything, then they're gonna exclude opportunities. Again, with the music,
What is up?
Where
you're
is
definitely
that
gonna get a
coming
copyright strike on this on YouTube. You watch. And then secondly is as your business changes, your story will no longer be like it used to be focused, but it's no longer representative of what you do. So you need to like change it again. But this is by far the hardest. Like I have the hardest time narrowing down and getting people to like settle on this. And I push and I push and I push because it's natural to be afraid you're going to miss out on an opportunity. The fact is, and I mean this as politely but bluntly as possible, you're not that important to strangers. They need to instantly understand what box to put you in, and whether they're in the group or the tribe, terrible word, but the group or the tribe that you work with and talk to. And if they're not in that group, you're not for them, and they bounce out of there. So yeah, you will absolutely be encouraging many people to sort of self-select and self-terminate from your audience, but that's what you're supposed to do. All the money is in focus, not in a generality. You'll never have the resources as a one-person company or a small company or an employee somewhere. You'll never have the personal resources to appeal to and serve everybody. It's just not possible. This is one of the other ones that's hardest. And the reason I say, in their words, while they're brushing their teeth, how do they describe the problem that they have? Nobody, while they're brushing their teeth, thinks to themselves, boy, I really wish for that open managerial spot that I have in retail that I could find a dynamic, self-starting, creative team player with experience in blah, blah, blah. But like nobody talks like that to themselves. And yet I will get people who answer this question using exactly that sort of straw man language. Corporate-y, synergistic, jargony, straw man language. Anybody, you guys like understand what I mean by straw man? It's like it's set
at
up
the end of the day,
that,
I do.
Yeah, a straw man answer or a straw man question is set up so that it's clearly designed to be successfully taken care of by the person who asked the question in the first place. And so while they're brushing their teeth, in the simplest sort of monosyllabic mode, how do they describe the pain or the problem that they're feeling? How do they describe their negative present? Usually it comes down to, oh, for F's sake, it's Monday again, which means my VP is going to ask me how that group is doing and whether I've managed to fill that managerial slot so that I can get this off my plate and start focusing on the things that she wants me to focus on.
I'm in
Right?
deep.
There wasn't
crap.
a single word in there other than manager that had more than 2 syllables. Right? That's the pain. I need this off my plate so I can focus on my own career, so I can look after my own customers.
Are you going as far as
or I can move up?
Are you going as far as monosyllabic? Like
it just needs to be simple, plain language that you would say to yourself while you're otherwise physically occupied, like you're brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
Right. It's not something you'd write in a high school term paper. It's what you'd tell your best friend while you're both like walking to the car. So yeah, the thing is, once we know this one, a lot of the other questions, we're not going to get to them today, but a lot of the other questions fall into place because there's even a question later down in the sequence that says, based on what you said in question 3, what would you do for this and that? So you have to have question 3 sort of locked in. You have to know how they describe their problem, because that's how you talk to them with their story and then put yourself in it. And then you need to figure out what positive future you're shortcutting them to. You notice, I don't know if you have noticed, but we've just jumped from number 3 to number 14. I think we're going to go back again. But they're in a negative present. If they weren't in a negative present, they wouldn't need you for anything because the present's great. The present is negative for some reason, and they want to move to a future that's positive. And so how are you shortcutting them to that? And that's basically, what problem are you solving for them, or how are you solving their problem? Normally, this is just a high-level question, and then we actually like fill it in with some stuff as we go that is more fleshed out. But you should understand not what your goal and what success looks like for you if you convince this person to buy from you or hire from you. You should understand a year out, let's say, what their positive future looks like. because that's how you shape your message to them.
So this is the arrivals gate at the airport, not the departure.
You got it, yeah. Or the flight, which is going to be
Or the
miserable.
flight itself, yeah.
And then this is one of the oldest questions that from the earliest iterations, the very earliest iterations of the earliest type of this is they're going to be looking at more than you. There's not a single thing, or there's not a single one of us that is on their own. We're literally the only one around who does what we do. Everybody has competitors or at least alternatives. If nothing else, doing nothing is an alternative to hiring you or paying you to do something. So you're not just competing against people and companies, you're competing against inertia.
That's right.
Right? So then we get to another part where we explain or dig into why doing nothing is actually less safe than engaging with you.
It reminds me of every webinar I've ever heard where they say at the end, you have two choices, do nothing. And
exactly.
Very common.
But they're going to be looking at multiple people. They're going to be looking at, a handful at least of different vendors and so on. It's very easy to go to Google and find somebody.
This is one of my favorite questions
Why are
because
you the safer option of those?
nobody ever answers this question.
It's usually, I usually have to coach people quite a bit to get through this question and get to the answer. And the reason for that is we almost never think of ourselves as needing to be the safer choice. And you don't win the business, especially in the B2B context. You don't win the deal just because you're the safer choice, but you don't get any further in the process unless they feel you're the safer choice. I mean, we've talked about before, especially in a B2B context, the unspoken question that you're always addressing when you're talking to someone who works at a company and the company is going to be your customer, hopefully someday, is why is it safe for me to vouch for you in here? In here means at my company. Because no matter how much money you might make their employer, or how much money you might save their employer, or how much better you might make their employer, if it meant that you blowing up or you even like getting in the door would be a reputation damage kind of loss to them, or they might end up getting fired because of it, then they don't care how much money you might make the company. You're not worth their job today.
So is safer the cherry on top of your B2B sundae?
No, it's the very first thing. It's the
first
very
layer.
first obstacle. In fact,
it's the bowl.
Bowl. It's the bowl, right? It's the table under the bowl.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the chair that the employee sits on. You need to, it's the first obstacle that has to be cleared before anyone else, before anyone will let you get closer to their company or closer to their wallet. And in a large enough company with a marketing department, it's actually marketing's job to clear this hurdle for sales so that sales doesn't have to spend time and effort like establishing that they're like worth talking to and a safe choice. Maybe not the perfect option for you
instead of number one. Why is it number six instead of number one?
Because if we don't know things like what industry or job they're in, what their what problem we're trying to solve, and so on, how do we know if we're the safe choice if we don't know what kind of problem we're solving?
Okay.
So they're not in order for a reason.
And
then the next one is, and this is back in the LinkedIn days when there were only 8 questions. This was question number 7. And I would tell people number 2 is the most important thing that you have to work on. And then number 7 is the most important thing for me. All of my value to this process comes from what was then number 7 and is now number 10. So we would talk about how are you different, unique, or even new. And new is very rare. I bet of the 240 something sessions or workshops like this that I've done, not even 5%, maybe not even 5 period of all of the clients that I had and took through this exercise and created their positioning statements were legitimately, genuinely new in some way that I could leverage. Like, it's extraordinarily rare. For every Uber, there are 5,000 companies that can say we're the Uber of something. We're the Uber of prison laundry delivery in the Boston metro area.
Prison laundry delivery.
I don't know. I'm just making it up. Right. So new, I try to steer people away from talking about new because in most cases they say something that's actually not new. And what we're trying to do here is this whole question is the origin of the horse lady story. Right. And the horse lady story, in case no one's ever seen it before, and I'll tell it as fast as I can. You're
Was she new?
you're looking for your very first, let's say, therapist, right?
Yeah.
It could be welder, it could be plumber, it could be lawyer, it doesn't matter. You're looking for your very first therapist, and you go to wherever you go, LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, wherever you would go to find, some people, and you end up with about 5. And the next day, your spouse, your mom, whoever, your best friend says, "Hey, so how's it going searching for a therapist?" And you say, "Oh yeah, so I looked at 5 that were like pretty interesting. 4 of them, and that's the key to the whole thing, right? Because 4 of them get amalgamated into one therapist. 4 of them, they look pretty good. You go to their office in a medical center or a strip mall or a skyscraper or whatever, and you sit down and they ask you questions and you talk. And then there was the horse lady. And the horse lady says, don't go to an office. Come out to this nearby farm. I'm going to put you on this sweet, old, super gentle horse. I'm going to get on one. And we're just going to go down a trail. I'll ask you questions and, you talk. It's literally the same thing being sold. It's the same service. It's generic therapy, right? But 4 of them get amalgamated into one person the next day, 24 hours later, which is all you can remember, and one of them stands out. And the horse lady doesn't get all of the business. She doesn't win all the patients, but she wins a disproportionate share because she's remembered in her own category on her own. And most likely, she even likes horses. It would be pretty unusual if she really hated horses or was afraid of them. But, that was kind of the angle that she took for her practice. So really, unique is useless. I used to try to get unique. A lot of people will come up with unique. I'm unique because, but I've yet to find anybody who can come up with a way that they're unique that a stranger or a prospect would care about. Because literally anybody and any copywriter with any skill can show why you're unique, right? It's unique is just Legos. You can just attach them. Works in this city, went to this school, deals with this kind of customer, companies of this size, graduated from X, blah, 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 has green eyes, whatever, right? You just stack it up and you'll be unique, but in a messy way that no one cares about. Different is everything. Different is where all the money is. Different is the equivalent of the second right answer, right? Different is something where competitors cannot or will not say the same thing that you're saying. And like I said, we're doing the exercises on the LinkedIn stuff for those paid sessions. Pretty much all my value was in figuring out different. Because if I have different, I have the very first line of the positioning story. And if I have that first line, I have everything. Everything else will flow after. Mm-hmm. So don't think about how you're unique. It's basically useless. Don't aim for new unless you're really sure you can carry it off, because it's exceedingly rare. But an angle based on like how you do something or what you do, in a slightly different way than everyone else for a different result or a different experience, that just requires marketing imagination, which is, either the rarest thing you're going to come across or completely free. But the angle, different, that's everything. I like to ask this question because it helps me figure out what the client's business's focus is. And it usually comes down to 2 options, right? Like if you got to choose, what would you focus on for them first? Like if they hired you, if they gave you the job, if they brought you in as a contractor, if they hired your company, whatever, right? What would you do first? And usually it's either we have something very small and we sell that first, and it sort of sets the stage. And that's actually what I do. We sell this whole thing for like $500 for the positioning thing. And because of that, every other package and service we have becomes faster and easier to deploy and cheaper because this part's done first. So it's not just the cheapest part of the whole thing. It's actually the foundation, the cornerstone of the whole thing. Or sometimes they'll answer by tackling the biggest, hardest, hairiest problem first. There's no wrong answer to this, but it does help inform what story we're going to tell. Because there are people who like to jump in and slay the dragon. And then there are people who like to set up the traps and knock down the easy stuff so that by the time they get to the dragon, it's almost, it's a matter of course that they're going to be able to kill the dragon because all of the other steps have been done first. So like I said, there's no wrong answer, but it's really helpful for your story to know what path you're going to go on, or some alternate path I haven't described, and what you would focus on for serving that person or serving that company first. And then this is a question that I'm surprised almost no one has an answer to until I ask it, and then we have to think about it. My guess is, in the horse lady story, she either owns that horse farm or she has an arrangement for that farm, right? And there's some reason why it's easy or cheap for her to do that, and not easy or cheap for someone to start it up from scratch. But almost all of our competitors have something that we could do cheaper or faster or easier. And if those elements exist, then strategy-wise, it's great to call that out, and sort of basically you're putting your competitors in a marketing position where they either have to answer, or in a sales position, why they have to answer why they cost more to do X or Y, or they're slower to do something than you are, or they have to sort of change their business to adapt to you. But you should absolutely know what's like. Here's an example from me, okay? And if you guys have examples I'm going to ask you in a second, how you approach this. So there are, to my knowledge, a vanishingly small number of copywriters who can and will work live with a customer and do the writing in real time while the customer watches them. And just the customer is almost there as a resource. So I can ask questions and eliminate all the other stuff. It comes to when I used to work for the phone company in Canada, way back when I lived in Canada. They brought in a speaker one time, and it was the first guy who had ever done ice climbing. So normally, until you got to the very top of something like Everest, or you would not deliberately encounter snow or ice. Once you get high enough on a mountain, you will. It's inevitable. But he was someone who would, like, the entire thing would be ice, like a frozen waterfall or something like that, right? He was the very first person to sort of figure out how to do that, what kind of equipment would needed, what kind of equipment needed to make, and all that kind of stuff. And it took him a day to go all the way up to the very first one he successfully did. A day to go up and then come down. Right? So and I don't mean like, a few hours. I mean like a work day. It took 24 hours. It was enormously high. But then a few months later, someone did it in just a few hours, like phenomenally faster than he did. And at first he said, like, I legitimately thought this guy was lying and that he was some sort of, charlatan or fraud. But, I talked to him. I realized, we were very, very similar. And what had happened was, once he, thought about doing it and saw that it could be done because I had done it, he realized, well, like, what is the faster way to do it? And then what this guy did is, the first guy approached it as if it was going to be a one-day project. He had a whole bunch of gear. It was very heavy. He had a tent. He had sleeping bags. He had all kinds of stuff. The second guy said, if I don't carry any of that stuff and I focus only on getting up, and then basically with a rope well enough secured, coming all the way down as fast as possible, I can do this whole thing in a few hours. And he did. He just thought about it differently. So there's something that you can figure out, or some advantage you already have, where something is easier or cheaper, or even just possible for you that isn't possible or easier or cheaper for competitors. That is a great aspect of your positioning story, of how you're telling someone their story, but now with you in it, because you're making something different. You're making part of their story and experience different. What about you guys? Any experience with this?
Yeah, we got a couple different pieces of experience with this, and I think they're both kind of pseudo-related. So it's easy for us to do social media and to help people with their short videos and syndicate them, because we've got the technology to do that. And
sometimes you own the tools and means of production.
You just own the tools.
And it's not worth either buying or learning it.
And know how to use them.
Yeah, because it's not their business to learn how to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the two big areas for us.
Yeah, I mean, I have a speed advantage because I can and will, and that's what, I mean, we show it every website Wednesday, right? From scratch with no warning. I can rewrite a lot of that stuff live in front of an audience. I just happen to have that skill / talent / curse. And so it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It's a blessing and a curse. Related to the last one is something a little bit different. If you're sort of new to a market or you're moving into an established market, right? Whether that's, whatever, coaching or widgets or, anything, there are going to be certain things and traditions and sort of inertias that your competition have. If they've been around a long time, they've got customers who are on legacy systems. They've got customers who expect things to work a certain way. They expect a provider to provide service A and service B and service C. And you have an opportunity, if you look at that and realize that that's a drag on their A, ability to innovate, and B, speed of delivery, right? You can actually decide to not provide that and not support those older customers from other clients. And just say if you want to do this, the 1.1 or the 2.0 version, and get similar or better results, then come with me on my boat and we'll go together. So it's helpful to realize sort of not just what kind of customers or technology or financial instruments or whatever else your competitors have to sort of maintain and pay for that you don't, but also whether or not, and we've talked about this before, if you look at almost any industry or any business, it's built on a certain number of assumptions, and one or more of those assumptions is no longer true or important anymore. But we almost never revisit the assumptions that we've built something on. We're only interested in sort of growing or building or expanding the structure we built on top of the assumptions. But if it turns out people just kind of don't, here's a great example for that, right? In life insurance, basically used to be what's called whole life insurance. And it was sort of a savings vehicle and kind of an investment vehicle and would also pay as traditional life insurance, right? And at some point, someone looked at that and said, you know what? I think there's an opportunity here. If people don't care about the savings aspect and building up savings, and they don't care about being able to cash out, and they don't care about leaving a legacy, or they just want to buy the insurance part, we'll call that term insurance, and we can knock off a whole bunch of the price. And we can even ultimately, they didn't think about this when they first invented term insurance, but we can ultimately just sell it on a website. It doesn't even require salespeople. So they looked at it, realized that some of the assumptions were not valid anymore, and started something new that had a part of it and left all the rest, in the dust. So if there's something that everyone else or your competitors feel that they have to do, or they've got a lot of legacy customers, you can actually just leapfrog them with new pricing and a new service and just move ahead of them. I think we're getting close to the end here. Well, this is 19, so we must be close to the end. And then the other aspect about this is there anything you have that your prospects would be interested in hearing about or buying that cost you little or nothing? It's slightly different from what do you have that they don't have, or what can you do that's cheap that they can't do unless they spend a lot of money. But in a lot of cases, right, you're willing to offer a guarantee. You're willing to offer flexibility. You're willing to be ultra fast, either because you've stripped down the service or product to something that's just the core, like term life insurance would be, right? Or do you have partnerships? A lot of fractional CMOs that I work with, they don't, they're an individual contributor, right? They're a person. And one of the things that some of the more successful ones will do is they'll actually bring along a whole bunch of partnerships with ad agencies and copywriters and graphics people and social media, folks. And they have all those relationships and partnerships in place. So when a customer wants, A and C and F, they say, yeah, we have everything from A to Z, and we can take those 3 things that you need, and we'll plug you right into those people. Right? It's basically an asset. Those sets of relationships are an asset that they've built up that they get to leverage over and over. What about you guys? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, there's always different things that we can add, audits to different things, or again, other things that involve technology that we can do faster than others.
That's it for me for this one. So you can say we jumped around there, right? And there are ultimately 21 questions. But the idea is the hiring manager, the potential customer, they all have the same core sets of fears and needs and desire for novelty and something that's worth their attention. And we've said this many times, right? Strangers have a bottle cap or thimbles full of attention for you talking about yourself and an ocean's worth of attention for you talking about them. Why would you fight that? So what the workshop does is it goes through all of these sort of questions and aspects of their story and then figure out how you're going to tell their story, but with you in it, sort of flavored with you. And that's what the workshop does. The workshop, by the way, there's a free version of it, a full 90-minute version of it with a workbook, so that with all these questions, so you can write in your own answers. It's going to happen starting at noon Eastern on Thursday, September, is it 8th? Whatever Thursday is.
September 8th.
Yeah. So we'll be going through all these questions with more stories and more time, right? Where, we try to do this within half an hour, give or take. But we'll go through with more time. I'm sure people will post questions. And while it's not the one-to-one service, it will provide lots of time and lots of examples and stories so that as we walk through it, you'll be able to build your own story. And that's it for us for today and the week, John. I think we lost Dr.
The week? That's right.
Copyright striking us.
I don't know. It might have been me. I'm not sure what happened.
I'm not sure what happened either.
It was weird.
So that's it. We're back on Tuesday for another Social Tuesday, and then another Wednesday, and then I don't know what we're doing next Thursday.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you again, John. Thanks, Dr. V.
You're welcome.
Whoever made my life interesting with the potential copyright problems I'm going to find on YouTube with that music. So be it. That's the way it works. And see you